Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the Bodhi Tree Buddhism community with our class number 6 in our series on calm and insight, study and meditation. Good to see you all here. Don't know how many people we've got online. If you've joined us today, if you're joining us today, please just drop a little comment in the comments box that comes along with the live stream and let us all know that you're with us this morning. My name's Matt Osborne. I'm the person behind the Bodhi Tree community here, and I'll be leading you all today through we're going to do some study, we're going to look at some meditation texts, and we're also going to do some meditation practice as well. Okay. Now, okay, we've got the first little response there from Kunjing coming in from California. Nice to see you. Welcome along today. And also Nathaniel, also coming in from the US there. Okay, good to see some people online. For some reason, my little interface here on Facebook is not showing the live stream. Okay, we've got Tina as well. Good to see. All the regulars. Good to see you all come along. But then on my other software, which is arranging like all my different camera inputs and whatever, it's all happening there. So I'm assuming that the video live stream is coming in fine for you. Please just let me know, of course, if there's any problems as we're doing the class. Just always, let me know. Give me feedback. It's always very helpful to kind of make this class a bit more interactive rather than just like a talking head. Okay, now as I mentioned, today we're up to class number 6 and we're going to be continuing on. Okay, I see we've got Margot and Terry with us again this morning. Now I'm really glad to see the two of you in particular because I don't know what's the situation with that Typhoon Vongfong. It should be kind of hitting the Philippines about now, I'm guessing, probably somewhere up north-ish. I'm not too sure. I've just been watching that typhoon news, of course, because it's sort of forecast that it's going to sweep through the Philippines and head north, come up just south of Taiwan, and then kind of veer up the east coast of Taiwan there. So I was a bit afraid you people might be having some difficulties there. So I hope those of you in the Philippines, I hope you're all safe. You're obviously somewhere where you've got some Wi-Fi or some connection. So I hope it can't be too bad for you, and I hope you're able to sort of take the time out and participate in the class. So I'm really glad to see those of you in the Philippines in particular this morning. And of course, glad to see everyone else as well. Okay, now where were we? So we're continuing on today with class number 6 and just kind of the format that we've been running through. So at the first 3 weeks we did kind of class session, so like a week class session per chapter of our text. But then the last couple of weeks, when we hit chapter 4, which is on making adjustments, we've kind of broken it up into a bit more fine detail. And then in week 4 we did looking at making adjustments to the body and sleep and food. And then last week we looked in particular at making adjustments to the breath when entering, abiding in and leaving meditation. And then today we are going to look specifically at making adjustments to the mind, some mental adjustments. But as we'll see in a moment, those adjustments to the mind also coordinate with the breath and with the body. So those last 3, making adjustments to body, breath and mind, all very closely interact and interrelate with them, interact and interrelate to one another. So we're going to see that in a little bit more detail today. Okay. Maybe just a comment, like I'm noticing that most people are kind of joining us for the whole course, which is good to see. It actually does make kind of having the class and teaching it much easier because I can feel like, okay, if you're listening in, you've got that background and we can kind of just build on week after week. But maybe I'll just put in a comment, there might be some people joining us for the first time. So just a comment about the text that we're looking at, why we're looking at. So the text that we're looking at is, in Chinese, it's called Xiaozi Guan. So the smaller text on calm and insight. And now this term calm and insight is quite well known, I think, in English language Buddhism, particularly the term insight. So it's best known by the ancient Indian Pali term of vipassana, and particularly people that might be interested in Theravada Buddhism and in contemporary Theravada Buddhism, the last 100 plus years, vipassana or insight meditation has been incredibly popular and a really big resurgence. It came from some particular period, in particular in Burma, now Myanmar, it was Burma at the time, and it kind of had quite a revival. It's insight meditation. And not just there, but there were teachers who learnt this in Burma that spread it through India and elsewhere, such as the great lay meditation teacher, Goenka, and also a number of Western Buddhist practitioners who went and studied Buddhism in South Asia, studied in these insight traditions, and then some of them, there's a couple in particular, who then returned back to the US. They studied psychology, they got PhDs in psychology, and they did research kind of taking contemporary scientific psychology methods and looking at these practices of meditation. And from that, later on, a number of different techniques such as mindfulness-based stress reduction therapy and the like, and a whole host of other different mindfulness-based meditation techniques have a direct connection there from those insight traditions in South Asia. But that's just the term insight. Now, if we look even more traditionally in the Buddhist teachings, insight is paired with calming, so shamatha and vipassana. So these two go together, and calm and insight is basically synonymous with what we might call meditation and wisdom, or concentration meditation and wisdom, knowledge, insight. So these two elements, and in the very early texts, these two are described as kind of being like the two wings of a bird. So if you can imagine a bird flying along, if the bird's only got one wing, it's not going to fly very well, right? Maybe it'll just kind of like go around in a circle on the ground. But with two wings, it's balanced, and both wings are required for the bird to have mastery of the skies. So likewise, a practitioner needs to have both this calm and this insight in order to accomplish the goals of this Buddhist spiritual practice. So this term, calm and insight, is a very ancient, very classically Buddhist kind of concept about how, the core part of what spiritual practice is. And I want to emphasize that because some people might feel, oh, well, you're looking at a Chinese text. And some people might think, oh, well, Chinese is Chinese there for it's Chinese Buddhism. And they might think, well, but I practice Theravada Buddhism, or I practice Tibetan Buddhism, or I practice Japanese Buddhism. Therefore, this teaching on calm and insight is not for me. It's a different tradition. I'm not very interested. And I want to emphasize again, right? Calm and insight is not a Chinese Buddhist thing. It's not a Japanese or a Tibetan or a Theravada Buddhist thing. It's just a Buddhist thing, okay? It's just basic Buddhist practices. Okay, we've got a couple of comments there. Just so from Terry, we've got some clearing this morning. Oh, good to hear. Okay, typhoon has gone up north and has weakened already. Thank you for checking on us. Of course. Philippines, you're our neighbours just to the south. Okay, so I hope it didn't hit too hard. I don't know how big this one is because it's coming up our way. Probably won't directly hit us here, but typhoon, you always got to keep on your toes. And good morning from Hanuman. Good morning, welcome along. And someone else, I think you're the first time to post a message here. So J. Kidrup R. Tasker saying, hi Matt, nice to see you after so long. It is too. So for those of you who perhaps don't know, this is Venerable Kidrup, an old friend of mine. It's a bit of a backstory, how the two of us know each other. From Canada, who's now been in the Tibetan Gelug tradition for many years. And Venerable Kidrup is presently doing some post-grad study up in Toronto, University of Toronto, I believe, and he is an excellent translator. He's done some very in-depth translation training, like many years of formal training, and he translates also for a Venerable Geshe, a very learned Tibetan scholar monk in Europe and also elsewhere. So it's good to see you too, Venerable. I'm glad you can join us as well. Okay, where were we? So that was a little bit about the background of this whole idea of karmic insight. Now let's jump on into the text and do our kind of reading portion as we do each week. So just, sorry, my mistake. So Venerable Kidrip's at McMaster University. So kind of in my mind, it's kind of close to Toronto, isn't it? It's a couple of hours to the west, something like that. Okay, but my apologies, and thanks for the correction. Okay. Let me cut over. I'm gonna cut to sharing the other view reading text. Okay. Now hopefully that should pop up with the text. Okay. Just let me know if it doesn't, and I can make some adjustments. To my software, I should say. Okay. So. If you're looking for this text, if you've only just joined us, the link for this text should be in the description for today's class. So it's the same one as last week and the week before. It's just chapter 4, okay? So remember, this is, let me just show you from the start there. Essentials of Buddhist Meditation, Chentai Master G's Classic Meditation Manual, the essentials for practicing calming and insight and dhyana meditation. English translation by Bhikshu Dhammamitra, also known as Venerable Heng Shou, who is one of the very, very early American disciples of the great modern Chinese Chan master, Master Xuan Hua, from the City of 10,000 Buddhas. He was the founder of the City of 10,000 Buddhas. And so we have this translation from someone who's got both the formal training to translate and also the practice. This is an important combination because a lot of, and I'm just going to be quite honest, and it is quite a critical statement, there's a lot of material and translations of material in Buddhism in English. The best stuff to find is translators who, one, they are properly trained in the languages that they are translating from. I mean properly trained. And two, they also have an actual personal connection with those traditions. So in this case, this is someone who not only has done postgrad study in classical Chinese and classical Buddhist Chinese, but he's also had many years of training as a meditator from an excellent meditator teacher in this tradition. Okay, and if you'd like to, you can go to Amazon and buy the copies of these works by Venerable Dhammamitra Heng Shou. They're not too expensive, they're pretty cheap for Dharma materials, and you get the Chinese and English together. Okay, now, so this whole chapter makes 5 different adjustments. We've talked earlier, adjustments in food, so balancing. Basically here it mainly emphasizes neither eating too much nor eating too little. But we can also add, of course, eating properly, eating healthily, right? Eating at an appropriate time. The next one is adjustments in sleep. Again, neither sleeping too much nor sleeping too little. And also, of course, sleeping at the appropriate time. Our body does kind of naturally have these daily cycles whereby nighttime is a time when the body rests, recuperates. Daytime is the time when we're more active. Now, maybe I'll just add another little comment about that sleeping element and the cycles during the day. This is also often argued one of the reasons why the best times to meditate are early in the morning and late at night. So just as the sun rises and just as the sun sets. So the kind of idea that the body goes on a cycle, middle of the day, when the sun's at the highest, the body is most active. And we're kind of the most active. But being the most active isn't necessarily the most conducive to meditation. It might mean the energies are a little bit too active, bouncing around, want to do stuff. And then the reverse is true, at like middle of the night, or maybe like, midnight to like 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning. It's the time when the kind of body rests and also the mind go back into that sleep state to kind of release off its various mental energies, for example, and through dreams. But then just in the morning when the sun's coming up, and then in the evening when the sun's going down, it's kind of this balance between this. We are awake, but we're also fairly calm. Then we talked about adjustments in body, breath, and mind, and that these three ought to be considered together. They cannot be discussed separately, even though I've kind of ended up doing that. My apologies. Okay, we talked about the body, in particular looking at the 7-point sitting posture, so from the feet and legs, the back, and so forth. And I noted that the text itself doesn't list it as a 7-point posture, but it is effectively using the 7-point posture. Okay, and then once we're seated, then the breath, so taking in a few full deep breaths and exhaling. And I also mentioned like alternate breathing through the nostrils to try to get both of the nostrils drawing the breath in and out, rather than what often happens is only one nostril is open at a time. This is just, again, part of the natural cycles of the body. They go in cycles of just a couple of hours. Again, adjusting the body, and also just, as we start to sit, adjusting the body and the breath, because your posture will affect your breath. For example, let me just change back to the, wow. You can't quite see when I'm sitting here. I need to sit back further. Anyway, but you can imagine if you're sitting slouched down, right? So your lower back slouches down, your shoulders hunch forward, and you try to breathe, you're constricted, right? Your whole body's slouched over. As opposed to if we sit up straight and the shoulders are open, then their breathing can be full, right? So we see this is like the simplest example of the relationship between the body, adjustment of the body, and adjustment of the breath. We talked about 4 different types of breathing, from the so-called windy breathing, this very coarse kind of gasping, often through the mouth and with noise, down to kind of uneven breathing, also pretty rough. Ordinary breathing, which is kind of our usual resting state breathing situation. Now this is kind of a general pretty calm, might be just sitting on the couch or something, reading a book, but while it's pretty calm for regular activities, in terms of bringing about meditative states, it's not enough, it's not calm enough. And therefore we need to work into subtle breathing. Okay, subtle breathing. So what are some of these characteristics of subtle breathing? So we talked about that a little bit as well. Somewhere in here. The main things being it's not coarse, it's very fine and even and smooth. It doesn't kind of like stop and start. Now we might think, my normal breathing doesn't stop and start. We tend to think that our breathing is very normal and even all the time, but actually if we take a few minutes, maybe just 5 or 10 minutes, to just sit and observe the breath, we'll find that the breath isn't as even as we think it is. It is not as even as we think it is. Now there's many reasons for this, okay, and I'm not going to go into all those reasons, but it's not. I mean, the biggest problem is not that. The biggest problem is simply we don't pay enough attention to the breath to know what kind of situation our breath is in. So the first one for subtle breathing, nice and fine and even. It will also tend to be slower. And in order to get that kind of slowness as well, it will also definitely help if the breath is also deeper. So kind of a long, deep, slow and even breath. Now, when I say those different qualities of the breath, some people might try to force it. Not helpful, okay? It needs to be it needs to be adjusted in this way where it is sustainable. You can keep that going kind of indefinitely throughout a meditation session. And I'll give you an example, I'll tell you a little story of a situation where okay, so this was quite a few years ago now. We were doing a 7-day meditation retreat. This was during one of the years of the Wooden Fish Humanistic Buddhism Monastic Life program. So in the program, 1 month program, of which the 3rd week is a 7-day meditation retreat, and it so happened that year I was leading the retreat. And I kind of tell people, like, you want to slow down your breath, just very, very naturally have it slow and even and smooth, but don't hold your breath, okay? Don't hold your breath because it's not sustainable. When you start to do that, you just can't keep that up. It's really hard work. And it's not just hard work physically. If you hold it, it will make your mind temporarily very calm and stable. And this is what a lot of yoga traditions do. They hold it, and by holding this breath, so pranayama, the mind will become very stable, because when you hold it, there's no fluctuations of the breath at all. So what happens is the mind also has very minimal fluctuations. But unless you're trained to do that, you hold it, and then you hold it, and then you right? And then when you then suddenly it's like very stable, and then boom, there's big bounce in your state of breath. And what happens to your mind is big bounce in your state of mind as well. You try to keep that up for a while, you'll get exhausted, and then each of those disturbances becomes bigger. So there was one person, despite telling the students not to do it, when we came to the end of the retreat, and I could kind of hear something was going strangely during the 7 days, but it was only at the end, and he was sharing, and he was saying that he was forcibly holding the breath, and he was doing it for session after session. And he said for the first day, he kind of managed to, he said, I could hold it very tight, my mind was very calm, and I entered into this very deep meditation. Oh, that's interesting. And he said, but he couldn't hold it, and he spent the rest of the retreat pretty much, the next 4, 5, 6 days, incredibly troubled. His mental energies were so out of whack that his head was just spinning off into all sorts of states. So he was kind of trying to forcibly make it like stable without any kind of real prior training in pranayama or meditation in general. Excuse me, a bit itchy in my nose. Apologies. So back to what we were saying. You want to keep it naturally slow and even, and this will be something that you'll need to train yourself in for many years. Okay. Well, the longer you can train yourself in it, the better. Of course, the more time you can put into it, the more able you will be to kind of bring about that slow, even, steady, fluid, fine quality of breath easily and in any circumstance, okay? And you will get to a point, if you train in this for some time, whereby you can just sit down, adjust your body, take your position, and within like a couple of breaths your mind will be already basically in that position. Okay, so remember the breath, you might think of the breath as something that's sort of like, well, this is our parasympathetic nervous system. It's like an automatic process. If we don't focus on breathing, we'll still breathe. But you can still apply focus and change your breathing, right? So it's not entirely automatic, but it's not entirely a kind of voluntary response either. And we tend to then think of these things as things we can't train ourselves in, because just our body will do it anyway. But that's not the case at all. We can definitely train the breath, and it's very valuable to do so. Okay, now I've talked a bit too much about the breath, but, well, actually, I'll say I haven't. It's always important to go back to this, because working with the breath is the key to working with the mind. So let's have a look next at this next section here. Adjustments in the mind when entering meditation. Okay. So it talks about a couple of different states of mind. So let's look at this. Fifth, the adjustment of the mind when first entering meditative absorption. involves three concepts: entering, abiding, and emerging. So the state of mind when you're first sitting down and you're getting into your meditative state, when you're maintaining it throughout the session, and then when you're leaving your meditation session at the end. The first is regulation and control of disordered thinking so that one's thoughts are not allowed to run off. The basic thing for calm concentration is keeping your mind on your meditation subject and not letting it run off to anything else. Now, here, so we kind of know that already, but more specifically, there are a couple of general mental states as well. As for the second, one must cause conditions involving 4 points: sinking, floating, laxity, and urgency. Now, these are two pairs. Sinking and floating are kind of complementary opposites, but they're both problems, okay? So if we can imagine that our idea is kind of between, it's neither sinking nor floating, it's like in the middle, nice and balanced. And likewise with laxity and urgency. Laxity is like too relaxed. Urgency is too tense. Okay, so let's have a look at these. What are these first two in particular? Because I think the first two are the big ones. What constitutes the mark of sinking? If when one is sitting, one's mental state is murky and dim. One doesn't remember anything, or if one's head tends to droop downward, all these constitute marks of sinking. Now, if you recall back when we were talking about the five hindrances to meditation, do you remember that? The 5 hindrances to meditation, we had like dullness and sloth and sleepiness, and then restlessness and excitedness. Pretty similar thing here. This is a bit more subtle, right? So it's a pretty similar concept here. So what do you do? What do you do if you find that you're getting dull and sleepy and the mind is just not clear? That's what it means by you don't remember anything. At such time, one should anchor one's mindfulness at the tip of the nose and thus compel one's mind to abide in the midst of objective conditions so that there will be no breaking up and scattering of the mental focus. Okay. Or another way I like to think of it is like this. You know, the term sinking goes down, right? Down. So we need to bring the energies up higher, and one of the good places to do this, particularly when we might be mindful of the breath, is at the nose. Now, it does say the tip of the nose, and I think people think of like the point of your nose, but I think a better way to think of it is like at your nostrils. So the point of your nostrils, in between your nostrils and your upper lip, that area there. Now, why that area? Because when you're breathing, and you can try this now, just take a sharp breath in. Where do you feel it? You feel it like at your nostrils, right? Now you feel it more so if the outside air is quite cold, because you get not just the force and the touching of the air, you'll also get like a temperature differential. Putting it here, being mindful of your breath at your nostrils, will bring the energies up higher, and it will prevent that kind of sinking. The second one, floating. What are the indicators of floating? If while one is sitting, the mind prefers to wander off and move about, if the body too is ill at ease, or if one brings to mind various outward objective conditions, in other words, you're thinking of other stuff, these are all marks of floating. So the feeling is like it's too high, and it's kind of like the term Chinese of fall. It doesn't just mean float, it also kind of means it's like if you imagine something's floating on the surface and it's getting knocked around by the waves and the wind, so it's kind of unstably floating. It's not anchored, right? So note, I use the term anchor, right? If something is anchored, it's still floating on the surface, but it's fixed. It's not just at the mercy of the wind and the waves. So what do you do? It is appropriate at such a time to stabilize the mind by directing it downwards and anchoring it at the navel. So here, when we think of navel, we probably think of your belly button, but there's also another important part here of the body, known in Chinese as the dantian, or the qi hai. Now, you probably heard the word dantian a bit more. It's really a Taoist term, the field of the elixir. So the elixir is like this potion of immortality. Okay, never mind that. It's also sometimes called the chi-hai. So the hara, I believe, is the Japanese term, which means the ocean of chi, the ocean of breath energy. And this point is, if you imagine, like about two finger widths below your belly button, that point on your navel, and technically it's a bit inside, but you can just put it just below your belly button. It might be about where your kind of the top of your pants are at, about that point. And you can feel the rise and the fall of your breath at that point. Now, again, similar principle, but the opposite to before. So what we normally have is the energy sunk down. We put it at the nostrils to bring the energy up. Here, the energy is too high, it's like too much up in the head. And you might also get this, sometimes people also get like meditating and get like headaches, get like tension headaches. Bring the energies down here to the lower abdomen, and that will calm it and keep it stable. Okay. Now, if you overdo it, now note that these two things are then treatments for specific problems, right? Energy's too low and dull, bring it high. Energy's too high and excited, bring it low. Now, if you do the reverse, right? So if your energy's too high and you've got too much thinking going on, and then you put it up at your nostril here, what's going to happen? Well, you can probably guess, right? What's going to happen is that energy is going to come up even more. You will get even more different thoughts going on in your head. You might get tension. Sometimes people get a bit of tension. Often you might also get often some people when they meditate, they get they might see like lights or images like that there. Sometimes that's also because the energy is too much around here, around the eyes and around the forehead, this part of your body and your brain. So then that's overdoing it, right? If the energy is already high and then you put your focal point up high, it's going to overdo it. Or likewise, if you're already feeling dull, so imagine you're having a meditation and you just had a big meal and you're a bit sluggish and it's kind of quite warm, and or maybe it's the reverse, maybe it's like in the middle of winter and it's really cold and you're under your like meditation shawl and blanket, and then it's very dark and you sit down and you put your focus low in your abdomen. Bye-bye, lights out time, right? So these are treatments. Remember, these two are treatments for problems. And in that way, keep in mind then that because they're treatments, you might have to readjust them. Now, you don't want to be like readjusting them every minute. You don't want to be bouncing around because otherwise you won't have any focus, right? So what I often suggest is, remember here, this is at the start of a session. Start of a session, sit down, adjust your body, adjust your breath. Spend 10 seconds, 30 seconds just reflecting, what is my state of mind today? Am I basically too excited and restless, too floating? Okay, if so, I'm going to put my breath down in the lower abdomen. Or you might think, no, I'm really dull, not clear, half asleep. Okay, what am I going to do? Then I'm going to put my focus up here in my nostrils. And if you probably can see that at the start of your session, if you're just doing a short session, 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes, or even an hour, and you can see what state you're in at the start of the session, you can probably leave it there throughout the whole session. If you're doing longer sessions, though, multiple sessions, you might find you need to adjust it. If you're doing a one-day retreat, you might find first session in the morning, maybe you've just come in from a busy week, you got a lot on in your head, start low, calm it down. But then once you've got it calm and stable, you might lose clarity, you might need to bring it up in a later session in the afternoon. Okay, so these are techniques to treat certain problems. Now, they've got another couple ones here. They also talk about urgency, which we might almost want to translate as a bit like too much tension. So it points out that, for example, because of this one, based on this circumstance, the focus of one's attention has moved upwards and brought about intense pain in the chest. I used to get this a lot when I was first at the Buddhist college and doing some longer retreats. Real tight in the chest, and I felt like I couldn't breathe fully. Basically, I was too I was too like worked up. Gotta meditate. Long retreat. Oh, gotta meditate. And I was making myself too tense, and I just needed to relax, just chill. You're not going to meditate better by getting all like stressed about meditating and putting big pressure on yourself. It's not going to work, okay? So you need to relax. And again, you might want to bring the energy downward into the abdomen. Okay, stretching will help. Pain in the chest, stretching will help to open up the chest, but it's not really the main issue. And then the other opposite of this kind of urgency or tension is laxity. Right? The body has tended to become slack and slumped. May even be there's been a flow of saliva from the mouth. You can just imagine that's pretty gross, huh? You're meditating, they're like drooling from the mouth like Homer Simpson. Okay, so what do you need to do here? You need to sit up straight. Put a bit more like, sit up straight, nice and proper, back up straight. Be a bit more, not tense, but a bit more kind of determined about it, right? Keeping the body up straight will also help to alert the body rather than this kind of slumping over drowsiness. Okay, so these are a couple of basic principles there. And you can see throughout all this, the state of mind is ultimately what we're trying to work on, but it's influenced by the breath and it's influenced by the body, and we need to adjust them all. Now, at the start of our practice, we may find that, we need to know this theory, we need to know these techniques so that when the problem occurs, we can make adjustments. We're on one side focusing on the breath as our point of focus, but then we also need to give a bit of attention, like, well, while I'm focusing, what's my state of mind and my state of body, and make adjustments. So it's kind of pretty busy. My main meditation teacher used to sort of say that. A lot of people think like, oh, meditation, you're just sitting there doing nothing. He says, you're not just sitting there doing nothing. You need to pay attention to all these things. Buddhist view, particularly of state of mind, says there are many different factors of the mind, many different elements of our mental state. We're trying to bring about a state of clearness and stillness, clarity, in order that we can see things clearly to overcome ignorance. But these two main things, so this focus and this insight, take place along with all these other factors. There's different perceptions and concepts we have different feelings, emotions, and reactions to those. All of these take place within our body. By adjusting the body and our senses, we are interacting with the world. Whew, it's complicated stuff. Knowing theory will help. Only knowing theory will only help so much. So I'm kind of a bit of an advocate of not so much meditate, just sit there and meditate and you'll learn it for yourself. You won't necessarily do that. And I've seen a lot of people that, have been supposedly meditating for a long time, but when you hear when they describe what's taking place, it just sounds like they are still just in a regular state of mind, but they just happen to be sitting there still for half an hour. Not much benefit from that, I'm afraid. Okay, now that's enough talk, I think, of our theory. We really should get into some stretches and then do some sitting. So let me just have a drink of water. Okay, we're going to cut to the stretch cam and do some stretches. Okay, so I hope you've got enough space there. You've got a bit of room so you can do your stretches. Okay, now you should probably know the procedure by now. We're going to start from the feet and the ankles, then the knees and the hips, do the upper body and the chest and the neck. And with the chest and the upper body, of course, we're coordinating with the breath. So let's just start. Okay, right foot rolling on the ankle. Putting your focus into your ankle as you're stretching it. Okay, back the other way. Okay, left foot So when we're stretching, we're already adjusting the body, right? And by putting our mental focus into the body, we're also adjusting the mind. So these things go together. Okay, back the other way. Not to mention that by stretching the body, it will, in general, make us sit far more comfortably. Less discomfort means we can sit longer and then spend that time to really work on our breath and our mental state rather than just kind of sitting there and feeling uncomfortable. Okay, that's the ankles. Now onto the knees. So hands on the knees, we're just going to squat down and then back, and we can really stretch the backs of the legs here. Down. Stretching the backs of the legs. Down. Stretch. Down. Stretching the backs of the legs. Okay, coming up. And then we're just going to do little circles with the knees. Some people, when they stretch the legs, they will do a lot of stretches kind of like with the legs out straight and stretching down, like stretching the hamstrings. And this will help, but to be honest, most of the time it's not that critical for sitting cross-legged, because when you're sitting cross-legged, it stretches different muscles and tendons. Stretching for running and stretching for meditation really do require different kinds of stretches. Okay, I'll add a stretch in a bit later today. Okay, so that's for the knees, warming them up. Okay, feet apart, we're going to come up to the hips. And then around for the hips. There's a bit of a bigger area here. You've got like inside, you've got outside, you've got the sides of the body, you've got your tummy, you've got your lower back, you've got your glutes. Okay, it's hitting lots of different muscles, so just, and as you move, it's hitting opposite sides, of course. Okay, back the other way. Okay, now I'm going to add an extra stretch today to kind of just emphasize that point I was saying. So often people will do the kind of stretches with your, I don't know if you can see this, look right here. Your leg out straight, leg tucked in and stretching down. Stretches the back of the hamstrings. Okay, very nice for running, for example, and also for certain kicks and different martial arts, for example. But when we're sitting in meditation, we're not sitting with our legs straight like this. We are sitting with them crossed. So I think a slightly better one is you can sit down, bring the feet in, and then down with the knees. So you're opening up the inside of the hips here. This is far closer to what we're doing in meditation, right? Sitting cross-legged. So you can just stretch that out now like this. And don't worry if your knees won't go all the way down. Just open it up and relax. Okay. There we go. Okay, just take out the legs, relax. Now for the upper body, the chest and also the spine. Lifting the hands in the front, stretching up. Opening up the chest. And exhaling down. Stretching up, inhale. Open up the chest, really deep breath in and down. Up. And down. Last one, up. And down, relax. Okay, that will help with your breath, opening up and relaxing the chest. Okay, now for the head and neck, we're just stretching up and down, chin onto the top of the sternum. Just feel the stretch in the back of your neck. Up and down and up and down. Up to the centre and left and right. And try to relax your shoulders when you do this. You don't like hunch up. Just relax your shoulders. Other side. I think when people first learn to meditate, most people first get discomfort in their kind of knees and ankles, maybe in the hips. And after that's kind of resolved, they tend to then get discomfort either in their lower back or their upper back around the neck. So you need to hit all these areas, you know. Okay. Roll your shoulders, relax your arms, get any tension out of the body. I used to do a nice whole range of I should do this maybe next week. Massages for your hands and palms, and also around the face and the ears, on the principle that it's like reflexology, that the whole hand has parts which correspond to your whole body. So in particular, your thumb. So from the top of your thumb is like your head, the top joint is your head, the next joint is like your neck, and then your spine. And so massaging this area has a reflexology equivalent of working your whole spine, right? So your thumbs, for example. You can do the same with your feet, but it's easier with your hands. And likewise around the face, around the eyes and the ears. In particular, this can also help to just wake us up, like around the eyes in particular. And the ears have a similar principle. The earlobes correspond to the head, and then up around the rest of the body, around the spine as well. So by massaging these points, it's a bit of a stimulation, helps us be nice and awake and fresh and more comfortable for meditation. Okay, now it's time to meditate. So grab your cushion or what have you. Sit down, cross your legs however you will. Okay, half lotus or full lotus. Sitting on a chair. I like to usually just turn to the side. Stretch around my lower back. You can also stretch forward and back, over the knees on either side. Okay, make sure you're nice and stable on your seat. Right, then let's go through the 7-point posture very quickly. Legs, lower back, so making sure your hips are not slouched, they're rolled forward. Position of the hands. You can use a meditation posture. You can put one hand in the other. You can put them on your knees. I'd recommend palms down. Chest open and full. So you take a couple of deep, full breaths. Head and neck up straight. So make sure you're not, alright, dipping your head. Your dipping your head is similar to this laxity and also sinking. You'll be like this when you're sinking. That's how you spot the sinking meditator. They sit like this. Then they start to drool. Okay, kidding. Or the two tenses like this. Really stiff and they can't breathe properly. So you're upright, alert posture, but relaxed. That's the trick. And we can take a couple of deep, full breaths. Make some micro adjustments to our posture. Now, just be aware of your eyes, whether you want them open, but making sure, of course, you're not visually distracted, or if you want them fully closed, but making sure that does not induce some kind of drowsiness. And then we're going to start our session. Just double checking our posture is correct, upright and alert, but also relaxed. Checking our breathing, that our breathing is not coarse or rough, but is fine, even, and it may be a little deeper than usual, but that we can maintain that without intense. Just be very relaxed and natural. And also just noting our state of mind. How are we today? I know it's going to vary. Some people are watching this in the morning, some of you are watching in the afternoon, some of you are watching late in the evening. We'll just be on the lookout for a couple of things. One is, are we sinking? We have a sinking, drowsy, dull state of mind, in which case let us observe our breath at the nostrils. Or do we have a floating, maybe tense or anxious, urgent state of mind? In which case let us observe our breath down in the lower abdomen, below the navel and the dantian. Now if you think that you're okay, you're not suffering either of these two problems, then you can choose either of those points to observe your breath, but maybe just stick with one of these positions throughout the session. It's a short session, shouldn't really need to change it. We'll avoid changing backwards and forwards. Will also detract from our aim of bringing about a concentrated focus state. So for myself, I'm going to go for down lower in the abdomen today. Just being mindful of my inhalation and my exhalation of the breath, and just settle the mind on the breath, maintaining my alert, upright yet relaxed posture. most of our attention, of course, is on the focus. We still need to, every now and then, double check our posture and readjust if so required. We also need to now and then check the state of the mind itself. So we know if any adjustments are necessary. If adjustments are required, we just make them. If not, then we just return back to where we were, maintaining that calm focus. Another check on our posture. So posture correct, upright but relaxed. What is our state of breath? Is it nice and fine, calm, even, so deep and slow, without forcing it? And what is our state of mind? Are we clear and alert, awake? Or do we have the problems of floating or sinking, urgency or laxity? If we do, we need to make the necessary adjustments. double checking our posture, making sure that we're not starting to slouch or lean, but also making sure we're not too tense. Checking that breath. How are we maintaining that moment by moment awareness, which enables us to keep the breath very nice and even, fluid, and in the mental state that observes the breath. Do we have floating or sinking? Do we have urgency or laxity? And if so, if we have any of these problems, we just make the necessary adjustments. Don't overdo it. Make enough to bring this state of body, breath and mind back to the middle way. Now at the end of our session, just very slowly take a nice deep full breath in, exhale all the way out. You're going to slowly transition on this calm, focused state of body, breath and mind, and back to our usual active state. Keep your eyes closed if they're closed, no rush. I'm just going to stretch the upper body left and right. Breathing in, we're going to lean forward at the waist, exhale, stretching the lower back, to the left, over the left thigh, to the right, over the right thigh, back to the centre, and inhale up, stretching the head up. And then relax. And roll your shoulders back and then forward. Stretching at your neck and head. And take our palms. Just gently warm up the palms of the hands. Cover over the eyes, massage around the eyes, the eye sockets, the forehead, around to the temples, the cheeks, down to the chin, massaging the face and muscles of the face, and the ears, from the top of the ears, and then down to the earlobes. Give them a good pull, squeeze, and warm up the palms again. You can slowly open your eyes now, if you like. And massage the back of the neck, back of the head, the shoulders, and down the upper arm, forearms, and on the side. Shoulders, upper arm, forearm, chest, sides of the body, the abdomen, and then the lower back, down to the hips. Now, hopefully you should be feeling very relaxed and comfortable in your body right now. Okay, then we're going to just slowly unfold the legs. And you can pick up the leg, massage the muscles, and not just the muscles in the back here, also the ones in the front. There's that long muscle that runs down the side. Shin. Feet, stretch back your toes, massage the sole of the foot, change sides. Hopefully that should make you feel very nice and comfy right now. Okay. How you all feel? I hope you haven't fallen asleep in the process. Let me just come forward and we will wrap up our session with a little bit of Q&A. I'm just going to lift up the camera here. Whoops, sorry. Oh, I need to change camera. I need to come back to this one. Okay, it's 10:15. How are you all going? How was your session? Please let me know. Now, as we just wrap up today with our last little bit of time here, I have another question for you all. So today is week 6 of the course, and the plan is for 8 weeks. Next week I think we're going to skip over chapter 5. Chapter 5 is very short. You can find that for yourself, have a little look through it. But we're going to skip into chapter 6, which is called, in Chinese it's 正修. It's the practice or the cultivation proper, which provides a little bit more detail, combines the different circumstances that we find ourselves throughout the day, and also under those circumstances, how do we cultivate the calm and also the insight. So it kind of starts to bring it all together. And so we're going to finish those off for the next week or 2. But my question for you all is, what are we going to do for the next course, right? So after we finish this, 8 weeks, might have a week or 2 off, a break time. I might try to put up some other different video clips in the meantime. But what would you like to see for the next course? So I've got a couple of ideas, but I want some feedback from you all here. So the first one would be to do something that's pretty similar to what we're doing now, a kind of a meditation class. We could also have it as sort of we're reading a text and also doing the practice. We might want to do something like, we could do something like the meditation text that parallels this one. It's called the 6 Gates to the Sublime. So it also talks about, it's got 6 practices in total. The first 3 are calming practices, and the last 3 are insight practices. And they kind of run through. They're not just independent ones. Starts off from the basics, breath meditation, from counting the breath, following the breath, fixing the breath. So it's also breath-based calming meditation. And then into various forms of contemplation. So that could be like one option. We could try a different style of meditation text as well, or we could maybe just do just a straight out meditation class and not worry about the text, just basically some oral instructions and then getting down to doing meditation. That could be another way. Or we could do something more of a slightly more theory. We could do just an introduction to Buddhism class. Now the first set of classes that we did for Bodhi Tree Buddhism that were taught kind of in person, just in a room at the Department of Philosophy at National Taiwan University. Excuse me. Oh, my apologies. But we didn't have those live streamed. So we've got some videos of those up on YouTube. They're not necessarily the best quality. So we could kind of go back and revisit that and just do a general overview of Buddhism. Again, maybe like 8 weeks. And we look at core parts of Buddhism, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Some basic ideas, say maybe the 3 trainings, looking at sort of daily life ethics, meditation, so-called wisdom or insight, and then trying to put all these together. That could be another option. Or we could maybe do a much more kind of practical Buddhism and daily life. We can look at the kind of the core parts of lay Buddhist practice, for example, from looking at the refuges, looking at the basics of Buddhist ethics, but really as it applies to kind of daily life. And there's a couple of texts in particular that we could maybe focus on. They could be maybe like one class, or maybe they could be even a whole course. We could maybe look at the text called the Sigalovada Sutta. So this is sometimes called the lay precepts or the lay ethics sutra. It mainly focuses on interpersonal relationships. So it sort of takes a single person as like the focus, so that would be me or you, and then looks at the different kinds of interpersonal relationships that we have, and it breaks them up into 6 categories. from our different elements of our family members, friends, associates, people that we work for, people that work for us, and also sort of teachers and religious leaders as well. So that could be another combination. We could either look at that like as 1 week of a larger sort of Buddhist practice in daily life, or we could look at that that could be a focus. There's enough content in there that we could look at it for more than just a single session. And then another Mahayana text on the Pure Practices chapter of the Avatamsaka Sutra, which has got it's kind of really interesting chapter there. It kind of takes literally like a day's practice from waking up in the morning. Sorry, there's a little bug flying around. From waking up in the morning to going to bed at night, and everything in between. And then for each of those, there's little verses that are recited, and these verses are combined with the basic bodhisattva aspiration of, I'm doing my practice for the benefit of all living beings, that all living beings can find happiness and joy and be free from suffering. So again, that could be like another partial focus of a whole course on ethics in daily life. So that's another suggestion. It could be something else. Maybe you want to look at a particular sutra. You want to just do some really straight out sutra reading classes. That's also a definite possibility. As a scholar who does Buddhist studies, of course, that's something that I've done a lot of over the years. We'd have to find a good English translation, but we can also reference it back. If you really want to get hardcore, we can also look at the English. But when we're looking at things and we want to really see the detail of the little nuances of certain passages, I can help you to kind of explain, look at the Pali or the Sanskrit or the Chinese, to really dig down deeper and try to understand some of these core ideas on a much deeper level. So that's a couple of possibilities. I need your feedback to help me make this decision, or help us make this decision of what we should do for our next session. Okay, so let me know. Let me know. So if you've got any thoughts, please throw them in now. Throw them in the comment section. We can have a bit of discussion on it. We don't have to decide like right now. Like I said, today's just week 6, so we've still got a couple of weeks to go, and even after week 6 we can also maybe have a bit of discussion to try to work out what we want to do. But I thought I'd bring it up now, give you a bit of time to think about it. Okay. So any thoughts? There's kind of no responses coming through right now. It's just a thank you from Hanuman Rivera. You're welcome. I hope you had a good meditation session this week. Okay. Well, I don't know. Now there's something a bit weird with my Facebook Live producer page at the moment, because it isn't actually showing it live here. So I kind of getting no feedback there. So I don't know. I think it's still going on fine on your end, but just something here, it's a bit weird. So I don't know if maybe also people are writing comments and they're not coming through. My apologies if that is the case. Technology, lots of things going on, and you try to get them right, but technology is always something that we're kind of stuck on. Now, so those just some thoughts about what we can do in the future. I'm happy to do any of those. Honestly, I enjoy all those types of things. I'm not going to be suggesting something that I don't find interesting. So really, I'm good for any of those things. Real good, from a bit more detail and advanced, or really just back to the basics. You always got to keep that in mind, I think, with practice. I think, well, maybe I should take myself as an example, but I think other people can be a bit like this as well. I think many of you out there listening to this, I'm teaching this in English. Probably, all of you are obviously speakers of English. Definitely not necessarily your native language, but for a lot of us, Buddhism isn't kind of a religious culture that we have been encountering from a very young age. Okay, so just a comment from Hanuman. We'll think about things, video and audio, okay? That's good, okay, glad to hear that. And so, you know, when we get interested in Buddhism at first, it often might be not from being part of a Buddhist community, but it might be from reading books or hearing something about it, maybe nowadays watching YouTube clips or live streams on Facebook. And so, you know, we read up on it, we kind of learn some of the basic ideas. It's not too hard, you know, there's a lot of stuff out there, we can learn these basic ideas. We try to practice them, and, you know, we do get some good results out of it, but we'll also probably feel like, you know, we're getting good results, but we haven't, like, hit the big time yet, you know, we haven't reached kind of mission accomplished status yet. And so we kind of then look, you know, what's the next step, you know, what's the more advanced practice? And this kind of idea, there's a very, very famous Tibetan teacher back from the old counterculture days, the old hippie days, called Chogyam Trungpa, very well-known guru, also wrote a lot and taught a lot. And he had the idea of what he called spiritual materialism, which is kind of whereby we can, basically, it's when we're doing our spiritual practice, the kind of ego takes over. We kind of want to, you know, we start to get into competition with other people about, like, oh, how many sutras have you read? I've read more sutras than you. How many, you know, retreats have I gone to? How many great gurus have I learned from? And we can very easily turn our practice into that kind of thing. We're just kind of looking for something higher and something better. And then we might feel that some of these basic ideas are like kind of a bit below us. Well, I've been practicing for many years now. I don't need to spend time doing that sort of thing. But that's not the case. It kind of makes me think of a story from the Chan tradition of, there was this very old practitioner. I think he might have been I think he was like some kind of minister or something, like as a government minister or some kind of military leader or something. And he would often ask a Chan master various aspects of the teaching. Now, he himself knew Buddhism very well. He was a very sort of learned, well-educated gentleman, but he still asked this Chan master, and he says, you know, so Chan master, you know, what is the essence of the Buddha's teachings? And the master said something to the effect of, you know, do what is good, don't do what is bad. And this, you know, very learned gentleman sort of said, oh, that's just so simple, you know, even a child of 10 years old knows that. Sort of saying, you know, kind of, I'm putting on the accent, but I can kind of imagine the way the story is told is kind of like, you felt a bit affronted, or sort of, it was a bit condescending that he, such a learned practitioner, would have some Chan master say something so simple to him. But the Chan master responded and said, well, yes, a 10-year-old kid knows it, but a 60-year-old gentleman might not actually be able to practice it. It's a bit of a burn, isn't it? So kind of the implication being like, yeah, it's a very simple concept, but can we do it? So my point is, you know, when it comes to our practices, or when it comes to what we're going to do for our next class, it's good to know stuff in detail. It does help. I'm not going to say it's not helpful, but also sometimes the basic things are the critical things. It's like one part of a daily practice can just be going to the 3 jewels for refuge, reaffirming the 5 precepts, right? It's very daily practice. Just start each day or finish each day, you know, Buddham Saranam Gacchami, Dhammam Saranam Gacchami, Sangham Saranam Gacchami. I go to the Buddha for refuge, I go to the Dhamma for refuge, I go to the Sangha for refuge. Reminding ourselves of these very basic practices. Don't overlook those. Don't overlook those. As the Dhammapada, that very famous, well-known text says, you know, don't overlook a small good deed, because drop by drop the water will fill a bucket. So don't overlook the small things, just the opportunities to do a small good thing. We don't have to do great things. We don't always have to know the most advanced practices. Sometimes it's taking the basics, but honing them to perfection. Okay, we've got a comment here from Terry. We're happy with meditation practice and theory class. One of us here suggests we can include Satipatthana. Okay, so the grounds of mindfulness, and we enjoy beginner's level. Okay, that's good. Good to see kind of sort of honesty, shall we say. It's like beginner's level, nothing to be looked down on. Yep, sure, that's very true. So Satipatthana, so the grounds of mindfulness. Okay, maybe that's a thought. Maybe we could look at the some of the Satipatthana suttas, the sutras about mindfulness of the body, mindfulness of the breath, and in total the 4 grounds of mindfulness. Okay, so thank you very much, Terry, for the feedback. Like I said, we've still got 2 more weeks. We've still got week 7 next week, week 8 the week after that. So we can, if you think of anything else in the meantime, let me know. In the meanwhile, it's 10:30. Well, 10:30 my side. That's our class time up. Thank you for joining us. I hope you've had a good session, and I wish you all the best for the rest of your day and the rest of your week. Stay safe for yourself, for your family, for your friends, for your community, and we'll see you again next week. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.